Jade had been awake for 31 hours when she walked into that dining room. She had flown overnight from Columbus to Frankfurt, Frankfurt to Prague, taken a bus to Český Krumlov, dropped her bag at the front desk, and immediately asked if anyone had seen her friend. The woman at the desk had started to say no and then looked past Jade into the dining room, which was visible through a glass partition, and said, "Actually." Jade turned around. Ashley was sitting at a corner table by the window with a plate of eggs and a cup of coffee and her journal open in front of her, writing. She was wearing clean clothes. Her hair was brushed. She looked, Jade told me, like someone on a vacation. Not like someone who had been missing for 11 days. Not like someone who had spent at least one night, possibly multiple nights, sleeping in a partially collapsed stone structure in the forest. She looked like someone who had woken up well and was having a perfectly ordinary morning. Jade stood in the doorway and didn't know whether to cry or scream or both. So she just said her name. Ashley looked up, and she smiled genuinely, warmly, like she was happy to see her. Like this was a planned meetup and Jade was slightly late. The reunion, Jade told me, was one of the strangest experiences of her life. Not because Ashley was cold or strange or different in any way she could point to. She was warm. She was affectionate. She apologized immediately for not being in contact, in the matter-of-fact way you apologize for missing a call rather than the desperate way you apologize for causing 11 days of active police search. She said she knew Jade must have been worried. She said she was sorry for that. Jade sat down. She didn't know where to start. She started with, "Where were you?" Ashley said, "In the forest mostly." And then she paused for a moment, looking down at her coffee, and said, "I know how that sounds. I know I owe you more than that. I'm still trying to find the words for it." Detective Novikova arrived at the hotel within the hour. The interview lasted 3 hours and was conducted through a translator, and Ashley was cooperative throughout, entirely cooperative, without defensiveness, without evasion. She answered every question directly. The answers were just not always what the detective expected. She had gone up the trail on the afternoon of September 23rd as planned. She had taken the upper path. And at the junction where the path branched toward the old structures, the junction where the stone pile was found, she had seen the man from the castle. The older man that Jacob the guide had seen her talking to near the secondary entrance. He was standing at the junction, not doing anything in particular, just standing. And he had said something to her. Not threatening. Not strange, she said. Just informative. He told her there was something worth seeing down that path if she had the time. He told her it was old. That most people walked past the junction without knowing it was there. He said it in the tone of someone sharing a piece of local knowledge rather than making a sales pitch. And then he stepped aside and walked back down the main path, and she watched him go, and then she turned and went the other way. Detective Novikova asked for a description of the man. Ashley gave one. Average height, older, she said 70s maybe, though it was hard to tell. White hair. Dark coat. Calm eyes, she said, and when the detective pressed her on what she meant by calm, Ashley thought about it and said, "Eyes that have seen a long time and aren't bothered by any of it." The detective had that description checked against every registered resident in the area, every known face in the castle staff records going back 10 years, every person connected to the property. Nothing matched. No one who knew the castle, who worked there, who lived nearby, who had any connection to the place, matched that description combined with that behavior. The man, as far as anyone could determine, did not exist in any record. Pause. What Ashley described finding in the old structures was, in her own telling, difficult to convey. She tried for 3 hours in that interview room, and she tried again later with Jade, and she tried in her journal, and she tried, months later, in a long letter she sent to her mother that her mother showed me with permission. Each attempt circled the same thing from a different angle, without quite landing on it. She said the oldest structure, the one with 3 walls and the partial roof, had a quality she kept calling present tense. Not historical, not ancient, not like a ruin. Present. Like something in it was currently happening, just outside the range of the senses she normally relied on. She said the silence in it was different from other silences. Thicker. More organized. She said she had sat down against the far wall intending to stay an hour and had looked up and it was dark. She had her camping stove in her day pack. She always carried it on hikes, she said, a habit from college camping trips. She had her journal. She had a half-eaten energy bar and about a liter of water. She hadn't intended to spend the night. But she also, she said, had not felt the alarm she would have expected to feel in that situation. She felt instead the same thing she always described when she talked about that place, at the right location, at the right moment. Like something had been waiting for her to arrive and had simply been patient about it. She spent multiple nights there. She was not frightened. She was not cold, which the detective noted was medically improbable given the September temperatures and the absence of adequate shelter, and which Ashley could not explain. She had no continuous memory of the days, not in a disoriented way, she said, not like lost time. More like the way time works when you're completely absorbed in something. You look up and hours have gone. She had been absorbed. Be it. The medical examination after her return found her in normal health. Slightly dehydrated. No signs of exposure. No cognitive impairment. The doctor who examined her said she was, physically, in the condition of someone who had spent a few nights camping under adequate conditions. Not 11 days in an unheated stone structure in the forest. He noted this in his report with the caveat that he could not fully account for it. There was one thing about the examination that I want to mention because Ashley mentioned it herself without being asked, in every account she gave of the experience. On her left forearm from wrist to elbow, there was a pattern in her skin, not a scar, not broken skin, not any kind of wound. More like a temporary mark, the kind heat or pressure leaves. A repeating geometric pattern. The examining doctor photographed it. He said it was likely pressure marks from sleeping on rough stone. He said it would fade within a few days. It faded in 6 hours. Jade photographed it before it disappeared. The pattern, when Ashley showed it to a historian of medieval decorative arts at Charles University in Prague, which she did 3 weeks after returning home, having sought the meeting out herself, was identified as consistent with stone-cutting patterns used in Central European ecclesiastical architecture between the 11th and 13th centuries. The kind of pattern carved into the foundation stones of buildings during that period. Below the visible surface, in the parts of the structure not meant to be seen. The historian said it was a striking coincidence. Ashley thanked him and left. Pause. 6 weeks after she got back to Columbus, Ashley gave notice at her job. She enrolled in a graduate program in medieval European history at a university she'd been accepted to years earlier and had turned down for the UX job. She sublet her apartment. She sold in a calm and organized process over 3 weekends, approximately 60% of her possessions. She was not erratic about any of it. She was not manic. She was not, by any clinical measure, different from who she had been before. She was just moved, in the way that word originally meant. Set in motion towards something. Jade told me it was like she'd been given an answer to a question she'd been asking her whole life without knowing she was asking it. I asked Ashley when I spoke to her what the question was. She thought about it for a long time. She has a habit of doing that, of actually thinking before she speaks, of not filling silence with sound just because the silence exists. Then she said, I think the question was whether there was a layer underneath all of this that most people don't have access to. Not supernatural, I don't mean it that way. I just mean old. Older than us. Older than the things we've built. A layer that's still there, still running, still doing whatever it does. And I think the answer is yes. I think I was just lucky enough to end up in a place where it was close to the surface. I asked, do you think the man in the dark coat knew that? Do you think he sent you there on purpose? She smiled. The same warm, unhurried smile Jade described in the hotel dining room. And she said, I think some people spend their whole lives near a door and never try the handle. I think he was just someone who knew where the door was. And I think I was ready to walk through it. That's all. That's the whole story. She went back to Český Krumlov the following spring. She didn't tell anyone in advance. She just went. She sent Jade a photograph from the trail, the upper path, the afternoon light coming through the trees in long gold bars, the castle visible below through a gap in the canopy. One message with it still here. I've looked at that photograph a lot. There's nothing remarkable about it. It's a beautiful forest on a clear day. The path behind her is empty. The trees are ordinary trees. There's no one else in the frame. But if you look at the lower left corner, and I want to be clear that I am not the kind of person who sees things in photographs. If you look at the lower left corner, where the path curves out of sight behind a stand of old spruce, there is a shape that might be a person standing very still in the shadow of the trees. It might be a shadow. It might be nothing. It is the kind of thing you see and then look away from and then come back to, and each time you look it means something slightly different, and none of the meanings are ones you can hold comfortably in your hands. Ashley said she didn't notice it when she took the photo. She said she was alone on the trail. She said it was a beautiful afternoon and she was glad to be back. And when I asked if she was planning to go again, she said, I think some places stay with you. I think that's the point of them. And I think, yeah, I'll keep going back. For as long as it'll have me. The door, she said, was already open. It was open the whole time. She just didn't know what she was looking at. That's the end of the series. If it stayed with you, if you're still thinking about that photograph or the mark on her arm or what the man in the dark coat actually was, then you know why I made it. Subscribe if you want more stories like this one. New episode every week. And if you know someone who needs this at 2 a.m., send it to them. I'll see you in the next one.